You didn't stumble onto this message by accident. You didn't just happen to be scrolling and find this word at the right time. No. This was divine timing. Heaven knew exactly when to interrupt your routine and remind you that you have been chosen. Before you even took your first breath, God had already marked moments in your life where he would speak directly to your heart. This is one of those moments. He chose you to hear this before October 24 because something is about to shift in your life, and he didn't want you to miss the signal. Maybe lately you've been questioning if God still remembers you. Maybe it's been hard to believe that there's still purpose in your pain. You've been walking through days that feel heavy, nights that feel endless, and moments where you whisper prayers you're not even sure God is hearing. But he heard everyone. He saw the nights when you wiped your own tears and still said, "Lord, I trust you." He saw the way you kept moving forward even when your heart was tired. And that's why he sent this word right now, because you needed to know that your endurance didn't go unnoticed. This moment isn't random. You're hearing this because heaven has something scheduled for your life that can't be delayed any longer. God's been waiting for the right time to remind you that his plan for you hasn't expired. You've been feeling like maybe you missed your chance, like maybe the blessing you prayed for passed you by. But God says, no, I'm right on time. The reason it hasn't happened yet is because he was still preparing the right atmosphere for your promise. Sometimes we get frustrated with divine timing because it doesn't match our expectations. We look at others and wonder why their doors opened before ours, why their breakthrough came while we're still waiting. But if you could see the size of what God's preparing for you, you'd understand the wait. Some blessings can't come early because you need to be spiritually strong enough to carry them. God wasn't ignoring you. He was protecting you from premature promotion. He knew that if he gave it to you too soon, the weight of the blessing would have crushed you instead of crowned you. So there were delays, but not denials. There were detours, but not disasters. Every disappointment was redirection. Every closed door was preservation. You see, sometimes God has to isolate you to position you. He has to quiet the noise so you can hear his voice. That's what he's been doing, drawing you closer, teaching you to depend on him, reminding you that your identity was never tied to what you lost, but anchored in who he called you to be. You might not realize it, but you've been in a divine setup. Everything you've gone through, the heartbreaks, the battles, the lonely seasons were all a part of God's strategy to prepare you for this next chapter. It's not punishment, it's positioning. The pain you went through was shaping your perspective. The people who left you were making space for the ones who will walk with you into your promise. Even the prayers that felt unanswered were actually being answered in a higher way than you imagined. If you're hearing this before October 24, it means heaven has already declared something over your life that's about to manifest. You've entered a divine countdown, not one of fear or pressure, but of preparation. God is saying, I'm about to do something new in you. Get ready. You've cried enough tears for the last season. You've done the inner work. You've surrendered what you couldn't control. And now it's time for the release. This is the moment where faith must rise above feelings. You may not see the evidence yet, but the word is already in motion. The fact that you're hearing this is confirmation that your waiting hasn't been wasted. God doesn't send reminders to those he's forgotten. He sends words to those he's ready to reveal his next move to. That's you. You're not forgotten. You're favored. You're not overlooked. You're anointed for what's coming. So lift your head again. Shake off the weariness. The same God who carried you through every storm is the one ushering you into a new beginning. You're standing at the doorway of destiny, and all heaven is watching to see how you'll step through it. Don't step in with fear. Step in with faith. Because if God chose you to hear this word before October 24, that means he's also chosen you to walk into what comes after it. Every word, every promise, Every dream you thought was over is being resurrected. You don't have to chase it. God is aligning it. You don't have to figure it all out. He's already written it. All you have to do is believe again. Believe that the same God who started this work and you will finish it. Believe that you were chosen for this moment, this season, this shift. You're not here by chance. You were chosen to hear this because heaven wanted you to know your next chapter has already begun. You've been waiting so long that at times it started to feel like maybe God forgot you. You've prayed, you've believed, you've stood in faith, but the clock kept ticking and the door stayed closed. And somewhere in between all those unanswered prayers and unseen breakthroughs, a small whisper crept in, maybe it's never going to happen for me. But can I tell you something? God didn't delay it to deny you. He delayed it to develop you. This wasn't punishment, it was preparation. There are things you've been asking for that require a version of you that had to be built through the waiting. God wasn't saying no. He was saying not yet. He was shaping your heart, refining your motives, deepening your faith, and teaching you to trust him when you couldn't trace him. Because the truth is, there's a kind of strength you only find in silence. There's a kind of maturity that only forms when God doesn't give you what you want right away. And he loves you too much to hand you blessings that your character can't yet hold. So when it felt like everything was standing still, heaven was still moving. God was working behind the scenes, rearranging, protecting, and orchestrating. You couldn't see it, but every delay was divine construction. Every closed door was an act of mercy. Because sometimes the very thing we're begging for could destroy us if we get it too soon. The delay wasn't punishment. It was God saying, I need you to become stronger before this next season begins. It's like the story of a seed in the soil. When it's buried, it looks dead. It's dark, it's lonely, and there's no sign of life. But underneath that soil, something powerful is happening. Roots are forming, foundations are being set. That seed isn't buried to die, it's buried to grow. And that's what God's been doing in you. The dark season wasn't death, it was development. You weren't forgotten, you were being formed. The hardest part about being in a waiting season is that it feels like everyone else is moving forward while you're stuck. You see others celebrating what you've been praying for, and it hurts, not because you're not happy for them, but because you can't understand why God skipped over you. But hear me, he didn't skip you. He's saving you for a specific time. When it looks like he's late, he's actually protecting divine timing, because when it's finally your turn, you won't have to force it, beg for it, or chase it. It'll flow. The door will open so naturally you'll realize it was always meant for you. You see, when God delays something, it's because he's aligning everything. Maybe the people connected to your next season aren't ready yet. Maybe the place you're supposed to go hasn't been prepared. Maybe you needed time to heal before he could hand it to you. The waiting isn't wasted when you understand it's part of the process. And I know the process is painful. You've had moments where you cried in silence, wondering when it'll finally be your time. You've watched other people live in what you've been fasting for, and you've had to fight the feeling of being forgotten. But God saw that too. He saw the frustration. He saw the loneliness. And he whispered, I'm still here, Daph, because his silence doesn't mean his absence. Sometimes he's quiet because he's too busy working on the details to explain them. There are some blessings that require isolation before manifestation. God had to separate you from certain people so you could hear him clearly. He had to close doors you didn't understand because he knew what was behind them wasn't meant for you. And yes, he even had to allow heartbreak, not to crush you, but to make sure your heart would never again settle for less than what he designed. Everything he removed was necessary for where you're going. You were never being punished. You were being protected from wrong timing, protected from counterfeit opportunities, protected from walking into something that looked like a blessing but would have turned into bondage. Because the truth is, when it's truly from God, it won't drain you, it'll sustain you. So instead of asking, why is it taking so long? Start asking, what are you teaching me while I wait? Because the wait is not just about time passing, it's about transformation happening. You're not the same person you were when you started praying for this. You've grown. You've learned to worship through uncertainty. You've discovered how to stand even when you don't understand. And that's why the blessing will stick this time. Because now you're ready to steward it with wisdom, not just excitement. The waiting season is never wasted when God is in it. He's been strengthening your roots, so when your breakthrough comes, it won't blow away in the wind. You'll stand firm because you'll know that it wasn't luck that brought you here. It was divine design. You'll look back and realize that every not yet was actually mercy in disguise. You may not have seen it before, but you'll see it soon, why it couldn't happen earlier, why he didn't answer that prayer the way you wanted, why that door had to close. Because when God finally reveals the why, you'll thank him for every tear, every delay, every detour. You'll understand that he wasn't holding you back. He was holding you together. So if you're hearing this before October 24, know this is you're standing on the edge of fulfillment. What God delayed, he's now about to deliver. What he was preparing, he's about to reveal. You didn't wait in vain. You waited with purpose. And now heaven is saying, you're ready. Your waiting season is officially turning into your winning season. There are moments in life when everything you thought was secure suddenly breaks. The plan you had, the people you trusted, the dreams you were chasing, they all begin to crumble in your hands, and you're left staring at the pieces, wondering how it all fell apart. You tell yourself you were doing everything right. You were praying, you were believing, you were trying your best, but somehow things still broke. And it's in that space between what you expected and what actually happened that God does his most transformative work. Because the breaking was never meant to destroy you, it was meant to build you. It was a setup for your becoming. Sometimes God has to break you to bless you, not because he wants to see you suffer, but because he knows there are some things that can only be released when you're broken open. There are strengths that only surface when your soul has been cracked wide enough for his light to enter. When everything feels like it's falling apart, it's actually falling into place, just not the way you imagined it. You see, we pray for growth, but we don't realize growth often comes disguised as loss. We pray for strength, but strength can't be developed in comfort. We pray for purpose, but purpose is birthed through pressure. You may not have understood it at the time, but God was using every breaking moment to reveal a version of you that couldn't exist any other way. That heartbreak, it taught you boundaries. That loss, it taught you gratitude. That betrayal, it taught you discernment. Every time something or someone left, it made room for more of who you were meant to become. It's painful, yes, but it's also purposeful, because sometimes God will allow what you built to break, not because it wasn't good, but because it wasn't you anymore. There's a difference between what's comfortable and what's called. And for many of you, the breaking came when you were clinging too tightly to something God was trying to remove. You thought you needed it to survive, but God knew it was only keeping you small. He saw how that relationship, that environment, that version of you was limiting your growth. So he allowed it to break, not to punish you, but to push you. Because if he hadn't shaken you loose, you never would have moved. You never would have discovered that there was more inside you than the version that settled. The breaking exposes truth. It strips away what's superficial and leaves only what's real. It forces you to face yourself, the real you, not the one that performs, not the one that pleases, but the one who's been hidden beneath survival mode. When everything else falls apart, you finally see that God was the only thing holding you together. And that's when transformation begins, when you stop fighting the breaking and start trusting the process. Maybe right now you're in that place, the in between, the aftermath of what broke. You don't recognize your life anymore, and you're wondering if you'll ever feel whole again. But let me tell you this, what broke you isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of your becoming. Because sometimes God has to let the old version of you collapse so he can introduce you to the person you were always meant to be. The pain you're feeling is not the end. It's the evidence that something new is being born. When a butterfly emerges from a cocoon, it has to struggle to break free. The process looks painful, but that struggle is what gives its wings strength. If you cut the cocoon early to make it easier, the butterfly would never fly. And that's exactly how God works with us. He doesn't remove the process, he redeems it. He doesn't eliminate the pressure. He uses it to empower you because he knows that if you make it through this, you'll never be the same again. The truth is, the breaking didn't come to end you. It came to expand you. You've been asking for more purpose, more clarity, more peace. But before God could give you more, he had to break the shell of what you thought was enough. He had to pull you out of the old so he could pour into the new. The breaking was God's way of saying, there's more inside you, and I won't let you settle for less. Every tear you cried was watering the soil of your next season. Every sleepless night was proof that something divine was happening beneath the surface. You thought you were being buried, but you were being planted. And soon, what's been growing in secret will break through the surface for all to see. The version of you that's emerging is stronger, wiser, more grounded, more connected to purpose. The pain that once made you question God will one day be the very proof of his presence. Don't rush your becoming. Don't despise the breaking, because when God restores, he never gives back what you lost. He gives you something better, something whole, something healed, something holy, and you'll realize that the breaking wasn't the end, it was the turning point. It was the moment God said, now I can use you. So if you're standing in the ruins of what broke, lift your head. You're not being punished, you're being positioned. You're not falling apart. You're falling into purpose. The breaking was never about destruction. It was always about transformation. You're not broken anymore. You're becoming. There's a shift happening right now. And if you've been sensitive in your spirit, you can already feel it. Something inside of you has been stirring, that quiet awareness that change is coming, even if you can't yet explain it. You've been sensing that God is moving, rearranging, and setting something in motion on your behalf. You may not be able to see it with your natural eyes, but heaven has already made an announcement concerning your life. It's almost like the atmosphere around you is whispering, get ready. Because what's been hidden is about to be revealed, and what's been held up is about to be released. Sometimes before God moves in your life, he'll first awaken your spirit. You'll start feeling restless, uncomfortable, even disconnected from things that used to satisfy you. And that's not a sign that something's wrong. It's a sign that something new is coming. God is shifting your desires, stretching your capacity, and pulling you out of what's familiar because he's preparing you for what's next. You can't stay where you are and still receive what he's trying to give you. The stirring you feel isn't confusion, it's confirmation. It's heaven's way of saying, I'm not done with you yet. This is the part where faith becomes your anchor. Because right now, you may not see the evidence of change, but you can feel it. The same God who whispered promises in private is now preparing to manifest them in public. The same prayers you've been repeating in tears are now forming the foundation of your next testimony. There's movement in the unseen realm, and you've been chosen to align with it. You see, before every major shift, there's always silence. Haven works in hidden places long before it reveals in open spaces. You think nothing's happening, but that's because God is still building. He's aligning people, preparing opportunities, and clearing paths you don't even know exist yet. He's setting divine appointments that will collide with your obedience. And when the time is right, everything will connect so seamlessly that you'll realize it was never random. It was always orchestrated. This is why you can't quit now. You're too close to the unfolding. The reason the last few weeks have felt heavier, the reason your emotions have been up and down, the reason you've been wrestling with old fears and fresh doubts is because breakthrough is near. The closer you get to your moment, the louder the resistance becomes. The enemy always fights hardest right before release. He can sense that what's been delayed is about to be delivered. That's why he's been trying to distract you with exhaustion, isolation, and fear. But don't lose focus. The fight is confirmation that you are on the verge of fulfillment. There's a divine announcement in motion right now, and it has your name on it. Heaven has been speaking your purpose into existence, calling your next season into being. The things you thought were lost are about to resurface. The prayers you thought were unanswered are about to make sense. The waiting wasn't wasted. It was all building up to this moment. You've been in preparation, not punishment. And maybe, if you're honest, you've been afraid of what's next. Afraid because it's unknown, because it's bigger than you, because it requires more of you than before. But that fear is the final gate before the breakthrough. God isn't asking you to have it all figured out. He's asking you to trust him enough to step into what he's already prepared. You don't have to force it. You don't have to chase it. You just have to be ready to move when he says now. When heaven announces a new chapter, things in your life start to shift to make room for it. Some people will fade away, not because they're bad, but because they don't fit where you're going. Some opportunities will dry up because they were only meant for your old season. Even your mindset will start to change. The things that once felt comfortable now feel too small. That's how you know the chapter is turning. God doesn't change your life without first changing your appetite. So if you've been losing interest in old habits, old environments, old patterns, that's divine evidence that a new version of you is emerging. Don't fight it. Don't cling to what's ending. Let it fall away, because what's coming next is holy. God is doing something you couldn't have planned, even if you tried. He's preparing a table you didn't have the resources to set, opening doors you didn't have the power to unlock, and placing you in rooms your name was already spoken in before you arrived. You've been through the breaking. You've endured the waiting. You've trusted through the silence. And now heaven is announcing the shift. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when, and the when is closer than you think. Before this season closes, you'll look around and realize that everything you went through was leading to this exact moment. Every tear, every test, every closed door was all part of the setup. Don't be surprised when things start accelerating suddenly. Don't question it when favor starts finding you unexpectedly. You've entered a divine release window, and heaven's timing cannot be reversed. This word didn't reach you by chance. It was sent as confirmation. God wanted you to know that what's been promised is now in motion. So stand firm, stay ready, and keep your spirit open, because before October 24, the shift that's been happening inside you will begin to show on the outside. The change is real, the move is divine, and the announcement has already been made in heaven. What's coming is greater than what you lost, and it's already on its way. There comes a point in your journey when God starts to nudge you to let go. Not because what you're holding is bad, but because it's no longer necessary for where you're going. And yet, that's one of the hardest things for us to do. Release what's familiar even when it's heavy. Because letting go means trusting that what's ahead is worth more than what's behind. It means believing that God knows what he's doing, even when your heart still wants to hold on. You see, we often pray for new beginnings, but we forget that new beginnings require endings. You can't walk into the next chapter if you're still clinging to the last one. You can't receive what's coming if your hands are full of what's over. And Maybe that's where you've been caught between what God's asking you to release and what you're afraid to lose. You've been feeling the pull in your spirit, that quiet whisper that says, it's time. But your heart keeps arguing. What if I need it? What if I never get something like this again? And God is saying, you won't, because what I have for you next is better. Sometimes the hardest part of growth isn't reaching for more. It's releasing what no longer fits. There are seasons where God will gently start to remove things that once felt like blessings. Relationships will shift. Opportunities will dry up. Environments that once felt right will suddenly feel too small. And you'll wonder if you did something wrong, but you didn't. You just outgrew that level. The same way a plant can't stay in the same pot forever, your spirit can't remain in spaces that limit what God is expanding. He's not punishing you by pruning.